Hello, today I'm going to be sharing the books that I DNF'd in 2023. So these are the books that I started reading and I did not finish. So typically when you DNF a book, it's because you don't enjoy the book and so you sort of stop reading it because you're just not having a good time. That's true for some of the books on this list, but I'm a very strong mood reader. So sometimes, even if I'm really enjoying a book, if I'm not in the mood to read it, I'll stop reading, and then sometimes I start reading something else, and then I've read like 5 books, and that book that I really enjoyed but didn't actually finish is still not finished. So that is true for a couple of the books on this list. So some of these are books that I started reading, really loved, and then just never finished. And then some of these books are ones that I started reading and then just didn't want to continue. And some of these books are books that I started reading, stopped reading for some reason, but I do intend to finish reading them even though I know I might not enjoy reading them, just because I do want to know what happens. I'm kind of curious about the book. So I hope that makes sense. So I am going to go through them in 3 different categories. So the first section that I'm going to start with are books that I really enjoyed reading, but for whatever reason, I just was never in the mood to read them. And so I'm just not going to finish them this year, but I definitely do want to finish them next year. So these are books that I DNF'd in 2023, but I do intend to finish at some point. The next section are books that I DNF'd. Maybe I just didn't really love the book and I kind of wanted to read something else that was on my list. But I do want to go back to it eventually. Like, they're not at the top of my list to read and I'm not like desperate to read them, but I am curious about them and would like to finish them at some point in the future, but I'm not like fussed about it. So if I never get round to it, it's fine, but they are still like on my TBR. And then the final section are books that I started reading, I DNF'd, and I don't think I'm ever gonna pick them back up again. I tried them and I'm fine. I don't need them in my life. I'm happy with not continuing. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm gonna dive straight in, and I'm starting with the books that I DNF'd in 2023, but I do plan on reading very, very soon, and I do want to finish them eventually. So the first one on that list is Babel, or Babel, I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced, by R.F. Kuang. I think I've spoken about this book before. I think it might have been on my autumn recommendations or my autumn TBR. I'm not quite sure, but I do intend to finish reading this. So I actually got this book for Christmas last year. It was one of the last books I picked up at the end of 2022, but I was trying to read it into January, but I just wasn't in the mood for some sort of dark academia. I was very much in the mood for some light, fun romance. So I sort of stopped reading this to read some of the other books that I was given at Christmas. And then I just never really picked it back up again. And I do really want to read it. It's been on the top of my list all year. So next year, in January, my New Year's resolution is to finish this book. But as it stands for 2023, this was a DNF, which is really sad. And I'm so desperate to read it, but I'm just not in the mood. And I've been reading a couple of other books recently, and I just want something fun and happy a lot of the time, and not something dark and academic. But I will. January, I will read this. So yeah, that's Babel, or Babel, or whatever this book is called. I didn't finish it this year, but I will. And the other book that's in this category is a book that I actually really loved. I really enjoyed this book. I do just want to check how far I got through this book, because I think I got about halfway. I've just got my Kindle. I'm on 61%. So I'm so glad. Wow, I'm over halfway. So this is Woman Eating by Kohda. This book is actually fantastic. So the premise is that our main character is a vampire and she lives in, I think, London. So it's set in the UK. She's a performance artist, and it's all about her relationship with her mother, who's currently got dementia and is in a care home, and what it's like trying to survive as a vampire, and then her relationship with her mother, and also taking vampirism as a metaphor for eating disorders. So it's really interesting looking at how eating disorders are very much inherited and looking at the relationship between mothers and daughters. It's so good. I love this book. It's so well written. It's so interesting. I think the only thing that, it's not a critique, but the thing that stopped me from finishing it is that it's very slow, which I like. It sort of takes its time. It's very thoughtful. And the writing is so thought-provoking. The word choices are just so interesting. And like the relationship between the main characters and the characters around her, really interesting. And her journey with her vampire self. It's just a really interesting, complex book. But I think I don't know what it is about it. I think I just need to be in the right headspace to read it. I think as someone who relates to a lot of the themes within it, particularly about sort of eating disorders and a relationship between you and your mother, like I get a lot of the themes. And I think for me personally, I just need to it's one of those books where you have to take your time with. Or for me personally, I feel like I need to take my time with it. So I am. I was reading it and then I put it down. I've since read, I think, 2 or 3 other books. And I don't think I'm going to go back to it this year. But I do want to finish it again as soon as possible next year. Or if I might finish it this year if I get into the mood. But I tend to read more light and happy things over the Christmas sort of holiday season. But yeah, I actually would definitely recommend this book. If I hadn't not finished it, it would definitely be in my list of top books I've read this year. I just haven't quite got there with finishing it yet, but I definitely do want to finish it as soon as I can. So the next few books are all books that I started reading, and then for some reason or other, I just didn't love it immediately and I just didn't really want to keep reading. But I might go back to these books at some point because I am quite curious about them. So the first book on this list is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. So this book, I heard a lot of good things about this book. I think it was recommended by some booktubers. I think I might have seen it on Bookstagram as well. So I had like quite high hopes for this book. But I started reading it and I don't quite understand the hype, but I haven't got that far in. I think, let me check again how far I'm in. I only read the first like 2 chapters. Let me just double check this. Oh, I'm 6% of the way through, which isn't great. But I don't know, there's something about the writing wasn't what I expected. I was expecting more. I don't know, I was expecting a book that was adult fantasy rather than YA fantasy, I think. Or like a book that was more adult than YA. And then as soon as you read it, it's very much like YA writing style. So I think that sort of put me off. But there was another book I started reading this year, which was This Vicious Grace, I think it's called. I'm not sure who the author is, but I'll put a picture of it up somewhere. This book, again, I had an idea about it when I read the blurb. The idea that what I thought the book wasn't what the book was when I started reading it. Well, I initially put it down and was going to finish it, and then I carried on and I didn't love it, but I had fun. And I think there might be same for Belladonna, where it wasn't what I expected. So I sort of put it down because I was quite disappointed. But I think if I were to pick it up again, knowing that it's YA and knowing it's going to have that sort of writing style, I probably will enjoy it more. So I want to finish Belladonna because I have heard such good things about it and I want to know what the hype is. I just need to leave enough time for me to be able to read it knowing that it's YA and sort of with slightly not lowered expectations, but more appropriate expectations. So, but I'm intrigued, but not intrigued enough to have it high up on my list of books to keep reading, if that makes sense. I think also the character, I didn't love the character immediately, but maybe she'll grow on me, I don't know. If anyone has read Belladonna, can you let me know if it's worth reading? And should I keep going with it? Or is it worth, if I don't love it immediately, does it improve or does it get worse or does it stay the same? Is sort of my question. Okay, moving on. The next book is another book that I was kind of disappointed by. Or not disappointed, but I had high expectations I started reading it, realised it wasn't gonna go in the way I thought it was gonna go, and then put it down. And this book is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Reid. So the problem with this book, well, not the problem, my problem with this book is that the plot just seems very contrived. I know that's the point of plots, but it just felt like the author wanted it to go in a certain direction, and so let me start again. I think the problem I had with this book is that I personally like character-driven stories, and as I started reading this, it sort of does feel quite plot-driven, or at least the beginning, like, setup feels very, like, plot-heavy rather than character-driven. And I didn't love that. I don't like books where the plot is just put in place and the characters have to just deal with it, rather than the plot coming from the characters deciding to do something, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think there's a romance, and the way that it's introduced and it starts off, I think it's enemies to lovers. And I don't know, there's something about it that I just didn't quite love. And that it put me off immediately. I think as soon as the two main characters, or who I assume are the two main characters, as soon as they met and decided what the plot was going to be, I was reading it thinking, I'm not that keen. And knowing now that you are going to be the main characters I'm going to be following, and this is the plot that we're all going to be involved in, I don't want to be here for it. I would rather not read you and go read something else, if that makes sense. So yeah, I don't know about whether or not I do want to go back to this. I might do. This is one of the books where I might go back to it if I've got like nothing else to read. I might read it again just to know what the hype is about it. I know of Reid. I would like to read some of Reid's books, and I've heard that The Wolf and the Woodsman is good. So I kind of want to know, again, I want to know what the hype is. I want to know why people like it, but I don't know if I personally am going to like it. Again, if you have read The Wolf and the Woodsman, let me know. Did you like it? And if you read it and didn't like it at the beginning, did it grow on you? So yeah, that's The Wolf and the Woodsman. So the next book, I was thinking about it and I was trying to decide if I would read this book or not. And it sort of snuck up a tear because I think, again, if there was like nothing else to read, I might pick this up again. But the next book is The Left-Handed Booksellers of London by Garth. So I picked up this book. I had high expectations because I love Garth. Garth is one of my favourite authors. The Ab Paulson trilogy, I'm not sure if it has a name. It's like the Something Kingdom, I think, the name of the trilogy. But I think that's more, it's not a trilogy anymore. It used to be a trilogy and then he wrote more books to add to it. So now I think there's 5 or something. But I love that series so much. It's such a big part of me and not quite my childhood, but like my teenagerhood. And I just love the stories. I love his writing. I've also read, he had another book out that I can't remember the name of, that's like Angel Mage, I think it's called. And I love that. So I had high expectations. And then I think because I don't love books that are set in present day with magic involved, I like books that are just there. We are in another fantasy world and that's it. I don't like books that are like our world but with magic. I'm like, if you're gonna have magic, have us in another world. Don't try and bring our world into magic. Just, separate them, please. That's just my opinion. And I don't know, I started reading this book and we got introduced to the main character and I don't know, I just didn't love it. I only read the first couple of pages and I just instantly stopped reading it. But I think I just bought a load of books, and so there were other books that I was more interested in reading. So I might go back to this book again if I sort of run out of books to read. I might go back to it. But I don't know, I just wasn't immediately drawn in, and so I gave up on it. But again, I might pick it back up again. I don't really know that much about it because I didn't really read. Maybe this was my mistake. I didn't really read anything about it. I just heard of it and picked it up and then got bored and put it down. So maybe if I read more about it, I might continue it. Maybe. But yeah, that's The Left-Handed Booksellers of London. So next we have, I think there's only one book on this list that I picked up, started reading, and I don't think I will ever try and read this again. And that is The Spice Road by Ibrahim. I'm sure I heard good things about this book. I'm sure I heard it recommended, I think on BookTube, but I definitely heard good reviews. So I had quite high expectations. And I got, I think like 20% in. And I was enjoying it at the beginning. I really enjoyed the magic system. So this had a tea-based magic system, which I read another book, A Magic Steeped in Poison, which also has a tea-based magic system. And that book I also read earlier this year. I was into the tea magic and I was enjoying it. I really liked the main character actually. I think this is one of the only books, or one of the few books that I DNF'd, even though I really enjoyed the main character. I think, again, it was one of the stories where it just felt very plot driven and I wasn't getting much character, driven story. The story didn't seem to have enough character in it. It seemed very plot heavy. And then, I don't know, I just was reading it and realised I just wasn't enjoying reading it. I just wasn't having a good time. I don't know what it was, because I was really enjoying it for the first couple of chapters. And then I just started getting quite bored. And I don't quite understand, I don't know why. And maybe it's me, and maybe it's not the book. And maybe I should pick it up eventually and try and go back to it and reread it and see if I just was in the wrong place for it. But I don't know, I just stopped having fun. I just was reading it thinking, I don't want to be reading this anymore. So I DNF'd. But maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should go back. I don't know. If you read Spice Road, did you enjoy it? Is it worth reading? I think the problem that I had with this book is how the characters could just express how they're feeling. And they just talk about their feelings. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But I feel like characters shouldn't always be able to say what they mean. And for them to just have a conversation where they're all saying exactly how they're feeling. I mean, it's good for us as an audience to understand how they were feeling, but it did feel very much like being told a lot. I think we get told everything about the characters, but also not enough for you to really understand where they're coming from, because you're not shown it. You're just listening to what you're being told. I don't know, I just wasn't getting into it. But yeah, but I think there is definitely a case for if you are reading a book and you know people liked it, but you yourself are not having a good time and are not having fun with it, just stop. You don't have to keep going. You don't have to keep reading a book if you're not having fun. That's my message from this video. My one takeaway. If you're not having fun, put it down and try another book. And then maybe at some point in the future, you can come back to the book that you didn't enjoy. So yeah, this video is a bit of a mess. I'm sorry. But yes, these are the books. So those are all the books that I did not finish this year. I will see next year if I manage to finish any of them. I think the two books that I definitely want to go back to are Babel. I'm pretty sure it's Babel, I think. That one, and Woman Eating. I 100% I want to read those books as soon as I can. Put myself in the mood to read them. The other books, maybe. I might. We'll see. So thank you for watching. If you have read any of the books I've mentioned, let me know what you thought of them and whether or not you would recommend picking them back up again. Let me know if you have DNF'd any books this year and if you are planning on going back to any of those books at some point in the future. And also, why not let me know your favourite book you read this year? Shake things up a bit. I am gonna do, I think my next video, just to give you a taste of what's coming up next week, I'm going to be doing a video about my most disappointing book of 2023. Because I have a lot of thoughts about this book and I thought, why not come on here and share it with all of you. And then the video after that, we're going to be more positive and we're going to be talking about my favourite books of the year. So you're going to have to wait another week of me moaning or me critiquing to get to the books I actually really loved. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss some more positive thoughts on books. And like and comment. I think those are all the things that you're supposed to do, I think. And I will see you next week.